Then John Bilorusky is co-founder of the Western Institute of Social Research in Berkeley, California. For 45 years, he's guided hundreds of students and consulted with dozens of community agencies. John has 2 forthcoming books. I hope we'll hear about those. He's an academic leader who deeply understands the power of education to strengthen dignity of the students he works with and advance social justice in the world. So John, please wave. Hello to you. Not everyone understands the work of the Human Dignity and Humiliation Studies Group in the way that John Bilorusky and his innovative program does. And so we're so glad that you made this connection. So John, please continue the conversation, because we know you've talked about some of the complexities of working with this particular topic.
Thanks, Linda. I'm really pleased to be able to meet many of you who I haven't met, and I'll just begin by saying I would welcome in the future to correspond by email. I typed in the chat my email, johnb@wisr.edu, and if you're in Berkeley, once COVID's over, meet face to face. But we do a lot by Zoom, so being a great distance is not a problem. So one of the things that we did with Linda and Evelin's help was to include a course in human dignity and humiliation studies in our bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs. And Rosa who's finishing her doctoral studies at Weiser, is also a member of our faculty. Rosa was, you might say, our first guinea pig, to go through that process. And Rosa did the course, and we've had a couple of other people do the course. And I wanted to talk about some things that I'm beginning to not so much learn as get a lot of curiosity about, to want to learn more. I think the challenges of helping all of us learn more about human dignity and humiliation studies and social justice and multiculturalism and related topics is that it is very complex and subtle, and not everybody learns it the same way. And that's one of the things that Weiser knows in general over the years, that people learn things very differently from one another. So in the case of this course, Rosa and another student just really got into it, and the way it was structured and designed, they learned a lot. Then we had a third student who enrolled in the course, an African-American woman who's very involved in a lot of community-based and social justice activities. She found it traumatizing, and she was having nightmares. And she finally apologetically says, John, I need to stop taking the course. Well, I'm not presuming to understand all the details of why that was the case, but I'm posing, and I've written a paper which is uploaded somewhere that you can access through Human Dignity and Humiliation Studies network, to raise questions. How can a great course like that be so wonderful for a couple of people and so traumatizing for a third? And it reminds me of the importance of inquiry in general, which leads into one of our emphases at Weiser, is to try to engage people in action inquiry, using a lot of qualitative and participatory research methods. And I'll crassly put in a plug for 2 books soon to be published by Routledge Press that I and others at Weiser have written, things that we've written over the years on transformative action research. And one of the things that we've learned, and many of you I'm sure have learned the same thing or similar things, is that a lot of what goes on is very situational. You can't make cut and dry conclusions about a lot of things without qualifying it. But in this situation, this works, but in this other situation, something very different works. And then that brings us to what I think is one of the larger agendas of this network, as I understand it, because I have been involved with you in a somewhat more peripheral way for a few years before being more significantly involved recently, is that not everybody comes to appreciate what human dignity and humiliation studies is about the same way or so easily. And I'm suggesting in particular that one area of action inquiry is to look for some really wonderful exceptions to the rule. And I'm going to give two examples of exceptions to the rule that I'm aware of, partly through reading online what's going on in the world and partly through a couple of films. Under what circumstance do people who are really, whom we would at least consider to be very hateful, stop becoming hateful and begin to appreciate other people and respect them? And there's two movies I want to recommend. One is called Best of Enemies, and it's about some things that happened in North Carolina, in a particular community there in the 70s, when they were trying to desegregate schools. And there was an African-American woman who was a community leader promoting that. And there was a white man who was a leader in the KKK who was obviously not promoting that. Well, I won't tell you the details of the movie, but let's just say the man who was a member of the KKK had a dramatic learning experience that was so profound that he ended up completely changing his views and became a lifelong friend of the woman he was opposing. There's another film that you may have read about too, because the Southern Poverty Law Center did quite a bit to help this man, who was also a member of a white supremacist group. And there's a movie made about it called Skin. And there's a documentary called Erasing Hate. This particular man had a lot of hateful tattoos all over his body. And he again also went through a major conversion. And the Southern Poverty Law Center raised funds to enable him to have the tattoos removed from his body after he went through the significant change of perspective. So I'm just giving those as two examples to say that those things, as we all know, don't happen nearly as often as we would hope they would. And it's worth learning more about them. So that's really about all for now I wanted to say for today, is that there's a lot for us to learn about, a lot for us to scratch our head about. Looking for exemplary examples of things that we think are really unusual but wonderful is one good place to start some research. Not the only place, but one place. So having said that, I cede my extra 20 seconds to Rosa Reinikainen.
There we go. Thank you so much, John. Really, I think with what you've said is so important in that understanding. We have to, over a period of time, it's 17 years now, to develop this sensitivity about humiliation and how it impacts people. And when you bring people into a learning experience, to be aware of that. So when you need to, you can step in and engage people in a constructive conversation about those challenges. Because we don't know, people have chapters and chapters of humiliating experiences in their lives that can rise to the surface when we even begin to talk about this topic. So thank you. Give John a round of applause. Thank you so much. David, thank you for making us Dating with Wiser program. That's so fantastic. John, thank you for bringing up the challenges of working with this concept of humiliation. It can be difficult. And Rosa, thank you for being a role model of taking these ideas out into the world and inviting more dialogues to grow out of that. And Maggie, I wish I could join you on one of your walking classrooms in Ireland. I'd be there in a flash if I could. So please get a camera for your head, and we'll just do a camera type of situation. But as everyone hears, this is a really powerful Dignilogue, where we can think about reimagining learning in a world in the midst of many crises, because we have many crises going forward. So we're going to move into our connection and reflection groups again to share ideas. What's one idea that stood out to you? How would you reimagine education? Because learning and education is an everyday experience, I think, of all of us as leaders of dignity in learning. And I'm going to move you into your rooms. I want to reassure people that I checked all my buttons to say, hey, your cameras should all work. So let me know if you have problems. You can always ask for help. And we will meet for about 10 minutes, and we'll be seeing you back in the room in about 10 minutes. So first, before you go, give an applause to our wonderful Dignilogue panel that got us started in such a powerful way today. Thank you so much, panel. Not panel, we're a Dignilogue group. Thank you, Evelyn, with correct language. But
Hey, these dogs start up with me.
enjoy your breakout room.